everybody. So I have recorded this vlog, I don't know how many times, and however this comes out, it's just gonna come out because I'm tired and I'm waiting for my little lettuce wrap from Five Guys to come. So here we go. Um, I I recorded this earlier, and I've had a couple of situations that occurred since then, and I wanted to include it because I'm bothered by it, quite frankly. Um, so I know that there's been a lot of conversation about Ara, about Robert, and I did a whole vlog about R. Kelly probably about a year or so ago, and I really opted at that time to not vilify him because it's not really about him, it's the behavior that's problematic. And I want to go on record to say that it's not just problematic for men to behave that way. It's problematic for women to behave that way. And, I want to make sure that I'm on record by saying that women can be predators too. But unfortunately, in our society, in the way that we've socialized boys and young men, it's acceptable for women to be predators. It's acceptable for a 30-year-old woman to go after a 15-year-old young man. And what is deeply troubling to me is that men will support this because it's a rite of passage and, she'll teach you whatever. I've heard this over and over again. Matter of fact, y'all know that I don't have very many serious relationships. But out of the serious relationships that I have had, I want to say two of them, I won't mention who they are, both reported either being molested or having some type of sexual engagement as they were children. It was both by older women. Both of these men are jacked up. Both of them. In some kind of way. The way that they view women, the way that they treat women, particularly treating me, I have to think that has something to do with it. But beyond that, we don't protect young men the same way that we say that we protect young women, because we don't protect young women either. One of the things that was interesting to me, and I want to read it, it said that how is sexual abuse of boys seen? Since boys are socialized to be men, they cannot be victims. They have a tendency to either minimize abuse or to deny it altogether. Hazing, sexual initiation, and punishment are often used as rationalization for abusing boys. If a 15-year-old girl has sex with a 32-year-old man, we call that rape or abuse. Reverse the gender and suddenly the boy is lucky to be initiated. It is easier for many to identify abuse if the boy is really young. Forced exposure and body and genital examinations are humiliations and teach children to be ashamed of their bodies. Punishing a child with sexual overtones is a setup for shame and humiliation. So I want to emphasize that because that is exactly what I think. And I was glad that I came across this study because a lot of young men, in my opinion and in my experience, when I talk to them about being abused, being raped, being violated, they don't really make that connection. They think because they consented or they said yes, that they somehow have escaped being victimized, being exploited, and being sexually abused. What I often say is, at the time that you did this, you were literally raising your hand in somebody's classroom to say, hey, is it okay if I go pee? You got a class schedule at the beginning of the semester that told you where you needed to be at every moment of it, every hour during the day. You were not permitted to move the way that you wanted to move. Your parents were still coming to parent-teacher conference. You could pay no taxes. You could pay no bills because you ain't had no money. You could typically not work without a work permit because you were in school. You were living in one room in a house that you didn't pay for. You didn't even pay for the room. You were on a twin bed, eating the food that was brought into the house. You could make requests, but it was not guaranteed that you're going to get that. How in the absolute hell do you think that you consented to having sex with an adult who had all of the things that I mentioned before, didn't have all of the parameters that I mentioned before, was actually paying a mortgage, paying rent, probably had kids, was able to go out and earn a living, and was an adult. An adult. Why do you make that disconnect? That is so egregious to me. And so, one of the things on the opposite end is that this creates such issues in men. Like, men are not even aware of the issues that it creates. It contributes to toxic masculinity. It contributes to how men view us as women, how you're able to relate to us, not just as women, but sexually, because before now, we've been predators to you. We've been, manipulators to you. We have, really robbed you of your youth and of your essence. And the idea that any woman that is beyond, 10, 15, whatever years older than you is actually invested in who you are as a human being, is actually doing something for you other than robbing you sexually, is absurd. Like, is she really, what kind of conversation are you having with a 16-year-old and you 30? I'll wait. I have a 19-year-old. She drives me batshit crazy sometimes with her conversation, only because her lingo and her, the way that she thinks and the way that she processes information, for me to have a deep and revelatory conversation with her, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. I honest to God do, but I recognize that my age and my experience affords me a different level, a different purview than hers. I could easily tell her certain things and she would believe it, not just because I'm her mother, but because I'm older than she is. Don't y'all think that some 30-year-old, some 26-year-old who has her eyes set on a 15, 16-year-old is not manipulating them, is absolutely taking advantage of who they are and their youth and their inability to process information past what it is that they're telling them? Like, come on, y'all, really? And you think that because they're boys, because they're men, because they somehow have more testosterone than us, that they're perfectly able to withstand that and that they're going to emerge on the other side unscathed? Like, it's time for us to protect our sons. That's why I'm so adamant. That's when my friend asked me, like, why are you so insistent basically in forcing men to acknowledge this? Because it affects them. What affects y'all as men affects us as women. And I'm not saying that to be selfish. I'm just saying that the dynamic of the family is so twisted that the men need healing. Women need their own healing, but men need healing. And I'm not willing to leave y'all behind. Like, women are having all these conferences and exposés and back and forth conversation. We rally around each other. We hug. We cry. We tell each other we love each other. Men don't have that support. Men do not have that support. Like, there is one podcast, and I'm going to recommend it below because they've got like a whole library of topics and things that are geared towards men. And I understand that men are wired different ways and blah, blah, blah. Like, trust me, I understand that. And it's not first of all, it's not my place, and it's not my desire to try and make anyone face anything that they're not willing to face until they're willing to face it. But I know this. Until you really get healing, until you really confront those demons, until you really understand the detriment and the destruction that was unleashed in your life when you allowed someone to come in and rob you and manipulate you sexually, when you had no ability to understand the consequences and the repercussions of that, like, those effects are long lasting, and I'm no longer willing to continue to play that game. Like, I have 2 sons, and I was an absolute tyrant when it came to them and who they were spending time with. And I'm not saying that I was able to catch everything, but a lot of stuff, like, I was deflecting. Up to and including when I took my oldest son to the dentist, and he was like, he had just gotten teeth. Like, he just grew the teeth. And he went to the dentist, and I took him for his first checkup. And I remember the dentist telling him, "Oh, hey man, you got sexy teeth. What the heck? What does that mean? Like, that's not cute." And I understand that she was being complimentary, and she probably meant nothing by it. But this idea that we sexualize little boys and we think that that's really cute, or we have older women saying, If you was just a little bit older, if you was what? Like what? You what, bitch? Like what? Like, I don't understand why we permit this from women. As women, we need to tighten up. We've been allowed to say certain things and do certain things, and it's no different than when a man does it to a little boy. It's no different. You can red coat him or red shirt him and, like wait until he gets to be of age so that you're legal and all that kind of stuff, but that's still disgusting behavior. You rob that kid of just being a kid. Kids, boys and girls, whether they are sexually in tune or not, because puberty does different things to different kids. I understand that. Let them play video games and let them learn how to manage the sexual feelings that they're having. Have frank conversations with not just their physicians, but with their parents to help kind of guide that and shape that so that they understand who they are as individuals before you start grooming them for sexual relationships. Like every woman under the sound of my voice, and men too, who have done that to little boys, you are disgusting and you should go to jail. I don't care. You should go to jail. If we are holding men to that standard, women should be held to that same standard. I don't think that it's cute, and I think that it needs to stop. I honestly do. Stop destroying these little boys. Stop destroying these young men and not giving them a chance to grow up and develop normally. Introducing them to sex and sexual situations and sexual relationships before they're ready. Just because they have men bodies does not mean that they have men minds. Your dumb behind is out here 25, 26, potentially got kids, got a mortgage, got a whole life, and you are going after high schoolers. You are sick. And you need to be arrested. There is no consent as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody is going to be able to convince me that this is appropriate. And before you jump in my DMs or make comments that this is legal, everything legal is not right. We have a moral obligation. And yes, I'm aware that morals and moral guidelines are different for everybody. But something we should all be able to agree with is that kids are off limits. If they're under 18, leave them alone. Leave them alone. Like, seriously, leave them alone. I have an issue with 18, 19-year-olds because I have a 19-year-old and I know how she thinks. But at least they're at the age of majority. At least they're at the age of the majority. They can vote. They got some benefits that are awarded by the government, and they're considered to be adults. They can sign into agreements. They can go buy cars and get credit cards and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so they're considered legal adults. I may not like it, but I would at least shut up. But if you're going after 15, 16-year-olds, there's something wrong with you. It really is. And I don't give a doggone what you think. There's something wrong with you. And men, honest to God, like seriously, this is not an indictment on you. I really don't want to overstep, but I have sons. I raised 2 boys. I have issues with this. Like, y'all really have been tainted. And to wear this as a badge of honor, it's not. It's really not. And it's affecting you in ways that you can't even see. It's harming families. It's harming you as a person. And I promise you, if y'all were to go and talk to the woman in your life, if you have one, she would tell you. Y'all don't see it because it's a blind spot, but we know. We absolutely know. Absolutely, we know. We know when you have a deficit. We know when you're deficient. We really do. If we love you, then we're in tune with you. I promise you that we are. I promise you that we are. But there's nothing that we can do until you let us. Actually, even if you let us, like all we can do is support. You have to still make that commitment to find help and to purge that and to get on with some normalcy in your life so that you're not so toxic and so deviant. That's just it. All right, this is my delivery. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.